This week on Rockstar Superhero. Gematria. Say that amazing word 3 times fast. I was so stoked to chat with Ray Suhy of this fantastic progressive rock act, and we had a wonderful time getting to know each other and touch on some really fascinating subjects. Ray is so clearly kind-hearted, and it was an utter blast to hang with him. It's times like these that I wish I could get more than 60 minutes of conversation, but I'm grateful to get any with Ray, I assure you. I hope you feel the same way. So let's get to it. This is my chat with the man himself and the creator of new ideas and stories. This is Ray Suhy of Gematria, and this is Rockstar Superhero.
I've got nowhere to be, so that's good.
Well, you made it easy for me, man. You're like, yeah, dude, let's just do 4 hours. So how about 40 minutes?
Yeah, no, however long we need is fine. Yeah, man.
Cool, man. Well, yeah. Ray, man, mm-hmm. I mean, really, welcome to my show. You know, this whole Rockstar Superhero thing has been, it's been a work in progress over the last 6 years. And nice. It's funny. Yeah, because I'm 56 now, and I find that the longer I go, right, the crazier, the wilder, the heavier, the harder, whatever it is, I really love the boundaries now. Like, yeah. I love jumping right off the edge of it,
Mm-hmm.
And I think Gematria was one of these things, like, I'd heard a little bit about you through the grapevine, through a lot of connections, people I know in the industry, a lot of PR companies. I mean, yeah, you're sort of this quiet legend in the business. I know you know this, but it's kind of but it's kind of a strange thing. Well, yeah. I mean, dude, you and I both know, man. We can name drop a huge band in, say, New Zealand that nobody in North America's ever heard.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So we all have our place, but yeah, I'm just glad that this Gematria thing is happening, because I think it's a chance for you to really. Again, it's not to say that you're not stepping into your purpose or something silly like that, but I just love the fact that you're going to get so many new listeners who are looking for, like prog guys sit inside a genre, man, and that they stay there forever.
Right. Mm-hmm. You
know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This Gematria stuff is, for me, it's interesting because it's the only project I do where I don't worry about genre.
Right.
Or I don't worry about style. We just let whatever comes out come out. I know that sounds kind of trite, but like that's the only thing like where I can do a jazz thing in it if I want. Right. I can play some bebop lines. I can play a doomy riff. I can play some progressive King Crimson type lines. I can like make a nice droney chord progression. So it's really freeing to do this stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not. It's interesting what you just said, because it's not. This, I don't know what even the word I'm trying to seek right now, but it's not this weird sort of artistic, narcissistic look at me thing. I love that it's a freedom. Mm-hmm. And there's this moment in all of our lives, right? And in our careers, and I guess just basically who we are, the foundation of who we are, where we finally go, screw this, man. I'm going to be me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Music is never been really much of a narcissistic thing. There's never that really element to it. Maybe when I was young and I wanted to show off, but that really went away very quick for me. So, music for me is a pure expression. So whatever style I'm playing, the expression and the intent and whatever I want to get across is the most important thing. It's the reason I don't post more playing videos online. When I try to do that, I feel like I'm showing off, and I never want to feel like that. I'm just playing. I'm trying to be as good as I can and practice and get better and better. But it's tough for me to be like, here's me ripping some lick,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. Dude, so I'm telling you, Ray, we're in the same boat. I mean, I know I'm older than you, but I look at like these kids on YouTube who are crushing it. They've got 20 million followers. Yeah. I'm a drummer, and I've been playing 50 years, man. It's a long time.
Awesome. Yeah.
And and those 20-year-old kids can absolutely crush me technically, because it's like their only focus was, look what I can do.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But the funny thing is I have to admit, a lot of envy and maybe a tiny bit of even jealousy that not only are they so insanely talented, they're not running the 4-minute mile, they're running the 3-minute mile. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But they have a place, they have somewhere to hang their heels and say, look what I can do, in a sense, right? And they get gigs, man. They're out there doing sessions, they're doing big tours, because the world met them when they were ready,
Yes, right. Yes. Yeah. That's a good thing about the modern technology, for sure, right? Yeah. So back when we were kids, that didn't really exist. You know, it was all word of mouth, and you had to get out there and do it. But the social media is great for those people, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I was influenced pretty much by what I would call difficult music, right? And being a drummer, I was into the obvious stuff. I was into Rush and Kansas and Crimson and ELP, and especially UK.
Oh, yeah.
and I knew you'd know who UK was.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And maybe even some ways Styx, because I have to admit I actually have a fondness for Styx, probably because it's cheesy and but they had huge harmonies, man.
Yeah, it was massive production. Yeah, no, talented dudes. Yeah, no, I had the tapes when I was a kid. There's it's very accessible, although you're very progressive at the same time.
Right. And then bands nowadays, we have modern bands like Dream Theater and Rendezvous Point and all this other stuff. But I'm curious. I'm always hesitant, and I say this every show. I'm hesitant to talk about the influence question, but maybe what I'd like to know from you to start is, what were your primary musical inspirations, and who are the artists that might surprise us?
Oh, wow. Okay. So
right there we go.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. So before I started playing guitar, I always heard a distorted guitar in my head. I heard a real warm, aggressive rock sound, which I later came to realize was AC/DC's guitar sound.
Nice.
So I think that was the first thing in my head that I was like, oh, that's awesome. I got to play guitar. I had to play guitar. I don't even know how to explain where that came from, but yeah. So once I got the guitar, and then it was all classic rock stuff. So, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, of course, all that stuff was what I learned to play to. I took a couple of lessons, and I was a really headstrong, stubborn kid. So I just taught myself. I said, Mom, can you buy me a tab book every month, and I'll just do that instead of lessons? So she did that, which was great. So every month I got a new tab book of a record, and I would learn stuff by ear and everything. Yeah. So, and again, this was in the 80s. So at that time, there was massive shredding going on. Once even in the hair metal and the pop metal that was going on at the time, the players were insane.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with George Lynch, and Dokken was the first concert I ever went to.
Nice.
I love his playing to this day. It's it's
George
some
is
of my
killer.
Favorite stuff. So expressive, and again, technical, but not. He's not coming from the.
No,
I don't want to say he's coming from the show off place. He's serving the song. If you listen to those solos, they fit the songs perfectly.
Yeah, he's not a noodly player.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he was big at that time, and then all those bands, that I went and saw all the concerts I could, and then from there went on to. I guess it would be thrash metal next, with Queensryche was in there. I loved Queensryche, by the way. And then Metallica, Anthrax were the big ones, Megadeth.
Yeah.
Those three.
The big four, man.
You
didn't mention Slayer,
no,
but
Slayer, of course.
Okay. Yeah.
The first time I heard Slayer, I think I was 9. I was scared.
I was afraid. I couldn't do it. Even if it wasn't true, I was like, but what if Satan invades my heart?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so good. So at that point, what was I, 14 or 15 or so, maybe around then. And then I was playing in the school band. I actually started on bass, before I got the guitar, which I forgot to mention. I started on bass in the school band. They came around and were like, anyone want to join the school band? I'm like, do you have a guitar? And they're like, no, we have bass though. And I'm like, all right, that's close, So I started on bass actually. And then, so I was playing in the school jazz band the whole time. And then that eventually led me to checking out some jazz stuff. So we went to, to Berklee College of Music for one of their high school jazz band competitions. So I think I was a freshman or sophomore. Wow. And yeah, so I was doing that, and I listened to some jazz a little bit, but it wasn't a big thing on my radar. And then we went to a record store in Boston while we were there, and I bought like some John Coltrane records, and I bought a George Benson record. And from that point, I was like, oh wow, I want to learn about this. And also at the same time, I was reading a lot of guitar magazines, which were really important to me growing up. And a lot of the guys in those magazines were talking about jazz dudes, like the guy from Queensryche was, Alex Skolnick was, of course. And then so I kept hearing Coltrane and Miles Davis and all these people's names. And so I was like, started to check that out. And then at that point, I started to get really invested into jazz stuff, or as much as I could, to try to figure out on my own. And eventually that led me going to Berklee College of Music and the New School in New York for a little while anyway. So yeah, that was like what led me into the kind of more jazz side of things, from thrash metal. But like I like any music that moves me. So when grunge came out, I thought it was great. And like, when, I heard Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden, especially, I was blown away, like, what the hell is going on? And, and then from there, it's like I said, like you hear Joni Mitchell's song and you're like, whoa, what is this? And then you go a deep dive into Joni Mitchell, so yeah, I could list 1,000 different things that I love they're all influences. Anything that moves me, not that I get too scientific with it, but like I try to figure out why it moves me, like what it is about the piece, what it is about the performance that moves me. I try to learn and take something from each of those things to be able to use that in my music. Right. So, and then when I go to play or write or improvise, some of that energy will hopefully come out.
Yeah. It's so interesting how music, we've heard the term, beauty's in the eye of beholder, and music to me is it captures me the same way, right? And it's because there's a moment that happens. I kind of equate it to, so I grew up in the church. I'm not going to get all religious on you, but I grew up in the church.
Yeah. No, I did for a little while too. It's good fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so like, I remember going to church and like a pastor would read a scripture, right? And it wouldn't impact me at all. It just, I mean, because I don't know, I was just there and I was bored or whatever, but it wouldn't impact me. But then I would go home, or maybe 3 or 4 days later, I would read it and it would impact me. And then I'd run to my wife and be like, hey, honey, and I'd read this, and all of a sudden it didn't impact me. In other words, like it was a moment that it was required, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Totally.
And I think of music the same way, because sure, a lot of it as, what hit us in the right place at the right time. Like in 1975, I heard the Hudson Brothers, Captain and Tennille, the Doobie Brothers, Bay City Rollers, Electric Light Orchestra, and they were all just starting to pop then.
Yeah.
And they all captured me in unique ways. So, of course, when I listen to those songs, it's like I can taste the air.
Yes.
I remember the food I was eating. I remember like making model airplanes in a back room and hearing Rock the Boat on an 8-track tape player.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Most
there's
definitely.
This crazy romance that comes with those moments. And, I know you've mentioned Joni Mitchell and you mentioned jazz, you mentioned all these other things, but is there some just whacked out thing you could not believe, like, holy crap, he loves green Jello, that's his favorite thing ever, is green Jello?
They were good. I had the tape. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Everything you just mentioned,
Scatterbrain,
everything you just mentioned, I grew up on. My mom was a big music fan, and Fleetwood Mac was huge for me. Like when I was 3, my mom got me my own record player. I can remember pretty far back. So but before that, she was always playing music. Always. So from the time I woke up, until whenever we left, music was playing. She was playing vinyl. So it was Fleetwood Mac. It was that light kind of rock of the time too. Jackson Brown, Christopher Cross was a favorite of mine.
Oh man, I love yacht rock, dude.
So good, right?
Pablo Cruz, Air Supply. Yeah. I love that stuff.
Yeah, and again, it brings you back to that point, to that time. Yeah. Man,
we're gonna be best friends, dude. Holy crap, this is killer.
Man, I can't think of anything that would be I don't know,
too out there.
I mean, Yeah, I don't know. Everything
No,
is
it's okay.
like I said. Anything that moves you is cool. Madonna's has some great songs. You know, Pet Shop Boys were a favorite when I was a kid.
I agree.
Falco,
I agree.
Rock Me Amadeus. So yeah. So there's nothing.
The first time I heard that song, I thought he was saying "fuck me" Amadeus. I'm not kidding. And I was living in Portland. I was in college, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Because I mean, I grew up again in the church. I never ever swore in my life until like 1987. I can remember when I started swearing.
Wow, yeah.
But I heard that, I was like, I cannot believe this is playing on the radio. It was same with Thunderstruck by AC/DC.
Oh yeah, great.
In the beginning, I thought they were saying "fuck you," and I was like, what? Fuck you, you know? So sorry, Mom, but you know, that's the truth.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay. Enough off tangent stuff. So I want to ask you about songwriting, and I want to frame it a different way. You know, to me, songwriting is an incredibly difficult thing to do. I mean, obviously some people, they flourish. It's easy. It just pops out of you. You know, it's just like a hot fudge sundae. It's just, there it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, like for me, arrangement is my thing. That's my jam. So I'm always looking to partner up with a killer songwriter. What do you wish you knew back then? You know, like, do you believe that songwriting would be easy, or has it been hard for you? I mean, what's your process?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, just say the first thing you said, what did I wish I know back maybe in my early 20s or something?
Yeah.
Was just to write. Don't wait to be inspired. It's not how that works 90% of the time. Don't get me wrong. You'll get ideas out of the blue. That's fantastic. That's the first thing I would say is just write. Just sit down and try to write something. When I was younger, I felt like that was forced and I wasn't going to get anything good. But I found out later that's really just not the case. You know, sometimes you have to dig around until you find something that's inspiring. We can talk a lot more on this. I have a lot of different things that I do to generate ideas. But so that's the first thing. Oh man, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay. What you wish you knew about songwriting or artist, you know, pursuing.
Yeah, so that's the first thing was just to write, just to go, you know, and then you know, and let's see. Oh yeah, sorry. Let me man. I forgot what I was going to say, but basically, yeah. So anyway, sit down and write, do it. But if you get an idea out of the blue, if you get it from the ether and it just comes to you and it's amazing and you love it, sit down right there and try to finish it. Don't let it sit, because that's magic and that came to you and that's a gift and you need to like work with it at that moment. Yeah. You can try to save it for later. And that's fine. And that can work out. But like, I've had the best luck when I just gone for it. And like, at least if I get one idea, I try to always develop into another part, at least one other part.
Yeah. You know, oh man. So this is so cool. I love talking about this because I think, you know, you just have to work it, right? You have to get in, you have to do the weightlifting. Dan Reed is a really well-known producer, but he was from Portland in the mid 80s. And he was, if you remember him, he was kind of a Prince wannabe, a kind of an up and coming local guy who for a long time sort of wore that Paisley flag. I think he was just trying to, you know, climb on that same train.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't until 86 or 87, I remember reading an article, he had actually done an editorial, and he was sending it out to locals saying, of all the things I've learned in the business, the most important thing I could tell each and every one of you is never stop writing songs, because it takes that constant attention, right, to thin that power down, that superpower.
Yeah.
And before I let you answer this, I've always thought of songs as eggs, and let me explain. Okay. You know how women, they have like a billion like eggs inside of their bodies, right? And then as we get married and we have little babies, we fertilize those eggs and a few of them pop out, and those billion eggs are still left inside of them, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think of songs the same way for a songwriter. I feel like every song that you're ever going to write is already in you, and it's up to you to pursue it, to pull it out.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. No, totally. And that leads me to another thought. Is like, I try to tell my younger students this that have bands. The first band that I ever had that did anything, I think we wrote 24 songs before we made our first record over the course of a couple years. Wow. And I think out of those 24, I think we didn't use 23 or 22. You know what I mean? Like those songs were just needed to get out of the way. You just had to like get out the dreck, you know, but we were exercising a muscle as well, though, you know, creating, you have to, songwriting is a muscle. You have to kind of work it, you know, and if you don't do it for a while, you know, you probably know if you don't do it for a while and you go to write, it feels foreign. You feel like you don't know what you're doing. You feel like you can't finish it. It's like, this is terrible. What am I doing with myself right now? Yeah. So for me, that's, I get, you know, just constantly keep doing it. But yeah, like I said, I try to take, if I have one part, I try to musically take those elements and make it into another part somehow. Yeah. Just flip it around, and that will lead me somewhere else and everything. Yeah.
Do you ever get sort of, you know, do you ever have a trigger in your head that says that's enough? Or, you know, because like a lot of musicians, you know, especially people in whatever you want to call it, progressive, jazz, right, free form, whatever, there's this constant need to sort of improve it, right? And to never, ever let a song be fully fleshed out.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happens sometimes. I do a lot of listening as I go. So for this Gematria stuff, you know, the way we did it, well, we can talk about that more later, but like say if Steve had a drum track and I was writing to it,
right,
I could theoretically just I'm doing it at home. You know, this was during 2020 and 2021. I could theoretically just layer and write part after part, you know, and just kind of like continually do it nonstop. For me, I always sit back and try to listen to it in a detached way, to kind of feel like this is not a song I'm working on. This is just something I'm listening to. And when I get in that detached place, I can really kind of judge it for where it's at and if it has the power and impact that I need. And if it does have that power and impact and the feeling is getting across and the energy is there and the song feels whole from that detached place, like it's not bothering me, like it's like I'm feeling something from it, then I know it's done. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, so something before we get to the album, because I want to talk about this quickly here, is, you know, Steve, I'd watched a video of him, you know, actually demonstrating a drum part, for example.
Yeah, he's an alien.
Clearly, I think another person I would deeply enjoy getting to know. But I've read, and I could be wrong. I could have misinterpreted something, that he didn't drum on the record, or
no, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, we can talk a lot about how this whole process went down. If you want, we can get into that for sure. So we did our first EP. Let's back up even further.
Okay.
I met Steve teaching at the same music school in Asbury called Lake House Music Academy.
Gotcha.
And he started there, I think, in 2015, maybe late 2014. I started around a little before him, but we slowly became friends and realized were interested in similar things. And then we talked about having a project together, and eventually he came to me. He was like, "Hey, I have all these songs that are unfinished. You know, you want to just play guitar over them?" So that was the process of our first EP. So he'd hand me these songs, you know, some acoustic percussion, a lot of programming, you know, he played bass on a lot of it. So yeah, our first EP is all of that. I just wrote parts over his existing tracks.
Gotcha.
So, and around that time when we put that EP out, we started rehearsing together. We played a couple shows and we wrote the first song on the record, Spindle of Necessity. So we wrote that together in the room. And then to get the whole ball rolling on the second record, Steve went in and tracked drums in the studio, and then to Spindle of Necessity, I laid down the just a rough guitar track for him to track to, and then I recorded the rest at home. So I'd probably say like, you know, there's real drums on most of the songs. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And there's some programmed elements that are a little more kind of electronic sounding. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I apologize because I had read something that said you had a featured or a session drummer that was actually part of the record. And I just made the assumption that he did all the drumming. I was like,
Steve's the featured drummer.
I would never do that. I'm too egotistical to give it away.
Yeah. No, Steve. So if you want to, we can talk about that because it has to do with the writing process.
Yeah.
So we wrote Spindle of Necessity, the first track, which we just released the video for. We wrote that together in the room. And then the second track on the record is Unconquered Sun. That's the first single we released.
Right. So good.
So what happened for that song is that we're trying to get more material for the record. And I said, Steve, go in and just record drums just record 2 tracks for me, just 2 songs, whatever you'd like to do. So Unconquered Sun and the song By Its Own Nature are started this way. So Steve just went in the studio with no direction from me whatsoever and recorded 2 drum compositions. Yeah. So Unconquered Sun came as whole. I didn't edit that at all. I didn't chop it up. It's just as he gave it to me. Wow. So yeah. Now I had a previous experience with that. I played in this band Cannabis Corpse for a minute. No. And I
read that before and I was just started laughing. Yeah. That's like System of a Clown or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and they were working on a new record, and Phil, the bassist singer in the band, he wanted a different take on his songs, and he just wanted something different. So he gave me the drum tracks to write to. So I wrote a lot of that. The record I did with them is called Left Hand Pass, which is a play on Left Hand Path. Yeah. But if you listen to that record, for the first half of it or so, I wrote all my own riffs to the drum tracks that already existed. And it was a really interesting experience being a writer. So when Steve gave me those, for the Unconquered Sun, like I tried to suss out his arrangement of the parts, tried to suss out an A part, a B part, an A part, a B part. I did the same thing on the Cannabis Corpse stuff. Okay, this is the A riff, this is the main riff, this is the B section. Oh, the A comes back, the B comes back. Oh, there's the bridge. Okay. Right. And then I composed to it that way. So with Unconquered Sun, I came up with the A section, then came up with the B section after that. And then, just let that guide me. That was really fun. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm spinning now. I'm spinning. I'm sorry for even referencing myself here. I've recorded in the past 35 years, it's always been a case of here's the songs, right? And then the drums lay down. It's always, we tend to be the latter piece of it. And that's of course, because a lot of times drummers are not typically songwriters. They're just, again, merely arrangers. Yeah. And all that being said, do you find now that this is sort of the way you want to go, that you want to move yourself forward, that there's some sort of like beauty in realizing that, this is how I write the best, that the chicken comes before the egg, so to speak? So
I would say no. I'd say like different processes are going to pull different things out of you. Gotcha. So those pulled different things out of me. Like I had to, both of those songs, Unconquered Sun and By Its Own Nature, both have a lot of drum ostinatos in them. Mm-hmm. First one has a nice triplet pattern. Yeah, which is cool. Yeah. And then the By Its Own Nature has this cool 16th pattern in there. So I had to kind of I had to compose to that, I had to write the parts, and I had to make sure the flow of the song got from point A to point B and said something. So that was a challenge. That's different than if I just generate the feeling and the parts on my own, So if I come up with a chord progression or a riff or a melody, and then I have to develop that and get to that, and then have the drums fit to that and add on to that. So for me, it's 2 different methods of expression almost, Those 2 songs sound a lot different than almost anything on the record, which is great.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, but it's really uncommon to do it this way. I mean, I know you know this, but I mean, I can only think of 2 bands right off the top of my head that do it, which is Gojira and Leprous.
Oh,
where
awesome.
Where they both, they're sort of building the songs around these ostinatos, these drum parts. And so, for those who don't know what an ostinato was, it's a repeating cycle of rhythm. Yeah.
Which is awesome because it gets you thinking rhythmically and pushes you in a different direction for those songs. Right. And then for some other songs on the record, like Alethea, Taming Power of the Small, what's the other one? Yeah, those 2, I recorded just guitar tracks down. Oh, and the song Ritual. I just recorded the guitars down, and I said, Steve, just go in the studio and do whatever you want. So I gave him some direction somewhat on some of the parts, like on the song Alethea, which is the last song on the record. There's some build-ups and drop-offs, and I just wanted to make sure that he knew, stop playing here. Leave this empty, and then come back in here. That's the only thing I told him to do, pretty much. Yeah.
Now, isn't Alethea a Hebrew name?
It's a Greek goddess. It means truth. Yeah, it's Greek goddess of truth. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who's named that, and I was
cool.
And I thought she said it was Hebrew, but yeah.
And you would know as well. Yeah. Maybe. So
taking it away.
So doing that gave different results. Gave a different flow to it.
Interesting.
And then the other final process we used was, again, Steve had these 2 tracks that he had recorded at home, and that was the Elusive one and Reunion and Daylight. And both of those songs were fully recorded by him at home, the bass, the drum, percussion, and everything. He did go in the studio and overlay some acoustic drums on that.
Right.
But then he gave me directions. He's like, on the Elusive one, if you listen to it, you'll hear this very clearly. He said on the Elusive one in the intro, don't play anything faster than eighth notes, but you can displace them if you want. So I took a pattern and displaced an eighth note pattern and displaced it by 16th every time. So
nice.
A little trippy. And then he said on the first solo section, have it be noisy like Adrian Belew or something. So I did my best. I put a harmonizer on my guitar and did like a solo like he would play, like a kind of weird thing. It's just not quite like Belew,
right.
It's that sound,
like a volume pedal EBOS.
Yeah, like with a harmony, with weird harmonizer on it. And then in the main solo, he said do like a Holdsworthy thing, which I love Holdsworth. I don't claim to play like him at all, but he's a huge influence on me. And again, it's his expressiveness. Like, there's almost no one more expressive than him, even though he plays crazy fast, insane alien guitar parts, that you really feel something from Holdsworth every time. So that's what I take away from him, And I mean, I'm going to do some legato things like he does, but like, I'll never try to play like him, because that's his thing,
I understand. Are you familiar with Charlie Griffiths from Haken?
Oh, yes. Very good player. Yeah.
Charlie plays, clearly influenced by Holdsworth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Well, this is cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, most musicians aren't sports guys. I'm not. I kind of doubt you are. I
used to be. Yeah, I used to be. Yeah. Life is fun. Yeah. So, I've gone through a lot of different interests and everything. But yeah, growing up in Maine, where I grew up, was, where in Biddeford was a big sports town. So it was I played sports growing up, and I was a big sports guy for a while. As I got older and was doing the music thing, there's just not much time to be a super fan. Like,
gotcha.
I can watch occasionally. The hockey, turned in like, when I was a kid, it was like baseball, football, basketball, but like, and then hockey I got into for a bit, but like getting older and like working on music, is just not much time for that,
Oh no, I get it. I get it, man. I've just thought, one of the things I've identified over the years is, and every musician knows this already, I'm not teaching anybody anything new, is that there's archetypes in music, right?
Yeah.
And specifically in bands, like you've got a drummer. Every drummer sort of behaves the same way for the most part. For the most part, there's this sort of personality to it, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I've always seen music as a type of sport, and whoever is writing the songs, or in a sense leading the charge off the stage, is basically the band's quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And so I'm curious, if this is a strange question, but do you feel like you're in charge, or do you like it to be more of a collective mindset where everybody democratically contributes and takes other people's ideas? Like, what's your favorite way of being in a band, if that's such a thing?
Okay. So let's back up.
And I'm sorry.
No, I'm old. No, I'm old too. I mean, that's why I need to, like, this is a multi-layered answer.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, and we were doing my first band, Coal Pits, which is like this kind of late 90s metal thing, new metal, kind of Tool, kind of a mix of all those bands, Deftones kind of thing.
Gotcha.
When I was doing that, I had such a strong vision for that band that I wasn't open for much collaboration. I needed to see it through the way I wanted to, the way I heard it. Looking back, I wish I would have let the other guys in more, of course. But like at that time, I was just very determined and stubborn. And that is okay to a point, because I really led things through and we accomplished a bunch of things that were good. We probably would have accomplished more had I been more open to collaboration. Now, as I'm older, now I know this kind of thing. But I needed to do that. And I had a band called the Baltic Sea, which is the band after that.
I swear I've heard that. I swear I've heard it.
Yeah. So that band, I really love that band. I was really into Mogwai at the time, and I was really into Hum. I was really into Sunny Day Real Estate. I was really into like that, as well as the post rock thing.
Right.
So it was like, and then my friend Todd and I started that band, and so that became more of a collaborative thing. He would write songs and I would write songs, sort of, and we would kind of trade off that way. And I really like that. Occasionally times in that band, I did the same thing where I just kind of like, I have this vision for this thing. It needs to be this way. Let's do this, and I mean, if you have a strong vision and you want to see it through, and for me, it's about the energy and the feeling of this piece. So it's like, if someone's like, hey, it's like, hey, I think this part should do this. And I'm like, well, no, that doesn't really go the way I want the piece to feel, so that, so that was the way I did that back then. Was, starting to collaborate more with the Gematria thing. So then I was in East of the Wall. Sorry. Then I was in East of the Wall, which was like, had 3 guitar players. And they were all everyone in the band was a really strong writer, and that was a little more collaborative too. And I really just wrote my own parts, or I would come in with some riffs and be like, here you go. And that was one of the first times where I had some riffs and I just let it go. I was like, okay, if they want to arrange it a certain way, they can. If they want to add parts, they can, so,
right.
And that was interesting. That led to some different results. Again, all these processes are like, pretty important and they're useful, every one of these processes, because they're going to lead you to a certain kind of expression, a certain kind of sound that you might not get normally. Yeah. So that leads us to, with Gematria stuff, what's great about this is that Steve and I feel like we both trust each other intently. So like, I mean, we trust each other like just immensely. So like, if he hands me a track, he's usually okay with whatever I do over it. If I hand him a track, I'm totally okay with whatever he does. We're coming from this very similar places with this stuff. So, it just kind of works out. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit of both, I'll push sometimes, he'll push sometimes, like I said, he'll hand me tracks and be like, hey, write over this, or I'll write him tracks, so yeah. And I like that give and take, dude. Yeah, it's the eggs. Yeah.
It's the eggs. And you know what? There is an amazing thing that's an unspoken, almost spiritual thing that happens between people, right? Like how, for example, you and I have never met until today, and we're only meeting over the internet, right? If it weren't for high-speed internet, you and I would really struggle with this conversation. Yeah. And yet we're having it, and it's really cool because we can kind of be intimate. We can kind of jive on each other's thing and be, I like asking these oddball questions. You like answering them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And there's a cool thing that happens, right? We start connecting and we actually make sense together, if that makes sense. And so like when you meet somebody like Steve, people who aren't musicians or creatives do not understand that it's like a marriage. You just instantly connect. You're drawn to each other, and by default, you just know you're going to do the right thing with each other's material, if that makes sense. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and you're plus, the two or 4 of you or 5 of you have this one project that's your goal together. Yeah. That's an amazing, beautiful thing. Like, cause that doesn't happen in other aspects of life. You're all working on this one thing that you all believe in and you want to get out there. Yeah. That's a cool thing. Yeah, for sure.
Don't you think it gets easier when you get older? I mean, when I was younger, I wanted to just dominate the whole experience. I wanted it to be my way. I wasn't interested in collaboration.
Yeah. That's what I was just saying. Yeah, exactly. No, it's much easier now. Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah.
Well, okay. Good. I'm glad I have a kindred spirit here.
Don't get me wrong though. Sometimes I still get, that way where I'm like, oh, it's got to be this way, but I try not, I know now that's not the best way to go about it.
It's maybe not the best idea most of the time, but there are moments when something is so sort of well crafted, it deserves preciousness.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want somebody to mess up something that really, truly works. And I think this is, I don't want to just call it an auteur theory, but there's a reason people with big ideas tend to develop their own ideas and do the hard, do it the hard way versus collaborating with others, because they would get it done quickly, but it wouldn't be right.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's it. Yeah. Nail on the head there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so the Spindle of Necessity is actually the title, or is it Gematria 2, the Spindle of Necessity?
The title is Gematria 2, the Spindle of Necessity. It's a little bit. It's
so
a little
prog.
bit. It's a little bit of a play. It's actually it's a little bit of a play on Break Into Electric Boogaloo.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so awesome.
I wanted to call it Gematria 2, the shapes in front of you, just to have it rhyme Electric Boogaloo. But no, Steve said Gematria 2. Yeah, so that's really where it comes from. Yeah, I know it seems all prog and like yes or something like that, but no, it's from Break Into. Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing? A Coheed Cambria impression?
Yeah, Steve and I. So that's another thing about Steve. Everything I talked about, I think he loved too. And obviously hip hop and rap back in the day was a big thing for me too, which I didn't even mention. Yeah. So.
Okay. Oh my God. Well, see, now that's where general generationally, we probably split.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because again, I'm 56 and my brain, I remember that was happening when I was leaving high school. And I remember thinking there's no way in hell that's going to be anything but a fad.
Yeah.
It's so not. I'm so wrong.
Yeah. I had a weird childhood with all the music around me because I had my mom playing all the classic rock and light rock. And then I had my friends with the Motley Crue and Rat and Twisted Sister tapes. Right. And then I had another friend that was getting all these like early hip hop compilation tapes that we would buy at the local department store. So I had all this stuff floating in my mind the whole time. Yeah.
That's so funny. I'm like, give me April Wine and Triumph. They're never going away.
Triumph. It's a great band, Triumph. Yeah.
Okay, so I get to ask the crazy question now. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I really I'm coming at this super blind. Okay, what I'm about to say. Yeah, I had heard, or maybe I should say, I had read that Kabbalah is the system behind this record, and I could be completely off, but I don't really know anything about Kabbalah outside of Madonna back in the 90s talking about it all the time. I really, I've never studied it. I don't know if it's considered, antithetical Judaism. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is really, but I'm curious how your own sort of personal spiritual or maybe non-spiritual walk has influenced the record's design and, like internal theology. Like,
sure. Yeah, sure. So Kabbalah is a system of classifying the soul and the spirit. The tree of life is the big diagram that everyone sees. Right. But Jewish Kabbalah, like the hardcore stuff, is much different from the Western esotericism that developed in the in the 1800s and stuff. The late 1800s, early 1900s, or even before that. But basically, it's a way to organize the soul and the mind. Oops, sorry, it's on my mic. Now, Gematria, the name of our band, is a system in Kabbalah that's the Jewish alphabet. Is every letter in there relates to a number. So their A is 1, their B is 2, and so forth. So there, and then some of the ways they find meaning in the early scriptures and the early texts, even the Bible too, is that words that have the same number will have correspondence to each other. So that's a big thing. And there's even talk like some, texts are coded that way. They're actually coded, so the deeper meaning is hidden unless you do the gematria for it. So I'll take it on a surface level, and then we can go deeper in a second. But so on a surface level, numbers and geometry were always big for me. I've been a big math is not quite the right word, but I mean, I was obsessed with arithmetic when I was younger. Like I was obsessed with numbers
because it's pure.
And when I started playing guitar, that's how I related to it at first. Numbers, it's like, and shapes. So numbers and shapes. So I was like, oh, I get this. And, if you need to go from the first to the sixth fret, that's 5. So the arithmetic of it was like very quick. And then when I started to get more into theory, you see more of the mathematical principles of that all just made sense to me.
Circle of fifths.
Everything, all that stuff. Yeah. So that all came very natural. So what we'll do with the Gematria stuff is just take, it can be as something as simple as like, oh, the tempo of the song is this, the gematria for this word is this. That can be the title, so that can be a way to name songs. We can take a word that we like, and then if it enumerates to 56, we can make a rhythmic pattern that goes from 5 to 6, 5/4 to 6/4, and then have that be the basis to try and compose. This leads me to another discussion about composing, where I'm a big believer in limiting yourself. Because music is such a wide pool, and if you like as much music as we do, and you sit to write down something, when you sit down to write, you can be like, I don't know what to do here. What can I do? Right. So if I limit myself to 5 and 6, I can think about that a bunch of different ways. I can have a rhythm that has 5 attacks and then 6 attacks. I can play 5 16th notes and 6 8th notes. It turns into this game. So the Gematria side of things like that, it just provides inspiration that way, thinking about different structures. And Yeah, so that's a big part of it for sure. Yeah, and Steve rhythmically he relates a lot to that as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love anything to do. I mean, I'm a drummer, right? So creatively, I love anything that sort of reinvents the subdivision of something. I love polyrhythms.
Yeah. And if it's a meaningful word, you can meditate on that word that that means something to you, and then create. Right. So it's not just math. It's not just this surface level thing. It can be a deeper expression of something that that means something to you. Yeah.
Well, King Crimson proves that you can play 1716 and somehow it grooves.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, by the way. You were going to say
that's it.
Stepped on your chicken.
No. Yeah, no, the first song, Spindle and Necessities in 13, and Steve makes that groove really hard at times, and I'm just like, I don't know how you're doing this.
Yeah.
But So, and we use other esoteric systems too, I'll come back to the Kabbalah and all that, but like the I Ching is a divination system, a Taoist thing, and it's based on 6 lines, which they call a hexagram, and it's either a solid line or a broken line. Mm-hmm. So as I was studying some of that, over the pandemic and even before, I made up a system. So with 6 lines, the musical octave is 12 half steps. Right. And it divides evenly into, if you divide it by 6, it's 2. So it's like 2 half steps 6 times. Right. So that gives us the whole tone scale. For the music guys, it's like C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and B flat. So you have 6 notes there. So what I did is I made a system up that, like, okay, if the lines are unbroken, that'll be the whole, series of whole steps: C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, B flat. And then if the line is broken, it can be either sharp or flat, whatever I choose. So, the way I did it at first is only flats or sharps. So if the top line's broken, I would make that C sharp. So then would go C sharp, D, E, and so forth. So I wrote the song "Taming Power of the Small" with that. So I threw with the I Ching, you throw these coins, you get the lines. So it came out to this certain pattern, and I wrote the notes down, and then I read the I Ching description of the taming power of the small, which has to do with something small that impedes progress of a bigger thing, pretty much, which can be many things. So then I meditated on that for a bit, or just thought deeply about it, and then composed with those notes. And that taming power of the small, the song just came out in one go. I didn't even think too much about it. So that's one of my favorites on the record. So that's a way to compose with this stuff. It gets you in a different place. Like, this stuff puts me in a place of wonder and awe. Mm-hmm. Which I think is so critical for inspiration and composing. Like, if you get to that place where you're in awe and wonder of anything, and you have that feeling in you, you get this inspired kind of glow inside of you. I don't even know how to explain that, but it's, and then like that energy, right? You go to create with that, and
totally
things will come out. So it'll just come out. It shuts off that inner voice in your head, which is the enemy, which we didn't talk about at all. But that inner voice telling you that it's shit and it's not good, and you should not do this. Yeah.
Right. Versus the head versus the heart, man.
Yeah, it turns.
Always gonna screw up.
It turns that all off. So yeah, it turns that off. So
this is rad. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No,
you just keep telling me cool things, and I keep wanting to jump in because I'm afraid of forgetting what I was.
No, that's all right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, this is so cool. See, I love, here's what's interesting. Here I'm a drummer, and I'm into rhythm, and I'm into subdivision. And yet when I was in school, I really, really disliked, and that's a kind word, disliked mathematics. Yeah. And I think it was because it was pure in the sense that it had an answer.
Yeah.
And I have always been about open-ended ideas, right?
Yeah,
I enjoy creative writing because of what it could mean, how the interpretation changes on your mood, and it depends on who's reading it, and right? Yeah. And so math, because it was so closed, it was so closed-ended, it just bored me, right? Yeah. And yet what you're talking about is so true, because everything in life, right? It's all, if you look outside and you walk through a forest, you can see, regardless of your spiritual or religious, thrust, you can see in the grand design of things a lot of predictable mathematical structures, right? Like you look at a tree and it's clearly lungs upside down.
Right. Yeah.
And here they are, the lungs of the planet, right?
Yeah.
Without them, we have no oxygen because we need
Yeah.
the chlorophyll to convert.
Yeah.
And I just love how math is such a thing. It's literally the building blocks of everything, and we poo-poo it like it's just almost like a technology.
Right. So, and then get back to the Kabbalah, that their tree of life system maps out the whole human body as well as the macrocosm of the, the universe and everything in the cosmos. So like that, like everything's mapped out there. And then, it kind of like, then you take it back to like sacred geometry, the seed of life, and circles and intertwining and all the shapes and things that come from that. This, it's pure math, but it describes everything in the universe. There's like just so many, Steve's very inspired by that, so, and he takes a lot of inspiration from the different shapes and things. I think in the video for Unconquered Sun that he was describing the drum part, there's a part we didn't get into, but I think he was inspired first by like a pentagram within a hexagram, so 5 into 6. So that song's in triplets, and he did a 5 note bass drum pattern over the triplet. It was the
yeah.
So
actually, he does a demonstration of that, I think, in a video, right?
So that's where that's another way to push yourself. So he was thinking of a pentagram, a 5-pointed star, and a hexagram, a 6-pointed star. So, and he was thinking of both of those within an octagon. So in his mind, there's an 8-part phrase going on while this other thing is going on top of it. Right. So that's how he pushes himself to kind of like, so it's a way to relate to, all this stuff. Yeah. So it's crazy. He's crazy. Yeah. So, so that, again, these esoteric studies, so for me, I grew up in the church, the Pentecostal church, and, it was pretty fire and brimstone too. Yeah. And then it was during the Satanic Panic as well. So I was, it was hard for me. Yeah. So around 10 or so, I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. There's a lot of this that doesn't make any sense. So as far as like how it affects the rest of the world, it's like, we're not the only, that's, what I mean?
Only white people get to go to heaven.
Yeah.
Because we're part of the church in America, and the church in America believes in prosperity. And Jesus wants us to be rich and all that other lie.
Yeah. So I had to vehemently reject that because I couldn't believe in it. I couldn't believe in that kind of closed system of things. So for a long time, I professed atheism, which was totally that was just intellectual because I just hated that so much. But like music was always spiritual for me, like always was like brought me to this other place, and then when I started playing, and sometimes I'd be playing, and then all of a sudden I would go to that place, I'd be like, whoa, there's spirit is in music, just 1000%, it's a huge part of it. Yeah, absolutely. So, so I said I was atheist for a long time, but this just wasn't true because I always felt that thing through music, which was higher than myself, which is, that kind of thing. I still believe in this is the higher, spirit. There's a higher energy, than myself. So, studying the, Kabbalah stuff and the other esoteric systems helped bring back that spirituality for me, which is cool. Yeah. And it brings back that sense of wonder. And it also gives me a way to kind of make sense of everything. Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I think our paths are very similar. I didn't bail out from the church, but I definitely bailed out from what I would call traditional, especially again, white Western culture, religion, and leave it to mankind, right? To take a beautiful, simple, pure thing and completely screw it up by injecting our own sense of deserve. Yeah. Right? Like, I deserve this. And it's like, dude, if you look at the teachings of Christ, you're going to tell me that his grace means you deserve anything, you dick. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm grateful for, like, I look at, so here's how I see it. And again, I'm not going to preach to you, but I love that we're talking about this. Yeah. absolutely am a believer. I've never walked away from it, but I do despise, like I said, the sort of the Western church teachings. And it's not that I'm into like Eastern philosophy so much as it is. I think when we get down to it, that whether you and I can agree on a religion thing or a God thing or a Jesus thing or a divinity thing or whatever, the beauty is I have, at least in my heart, said, I'm going to make it about my heart first. And I'm going to love on people regardless.
Yeah.
Because if there's any one thing I could do to kind of emulate the teachings of Christ, whether I'm an idiot or whatever I am, I just want to be like a guy who's somewhat decent and open to suggestion and is going to love on somebody regardless, because I love the idea of agape love and admiration.
Yes.
And so for me, my show is actually sort of built around that foundation of saying, look, the music business has basically fucked everybody in the world and taken away their the beauty of their artistry and that soulful part of them, and it's made it about something else so it can control it. And so I just told myself, you know what I'm going to be? I'm going to be an advocate for the people. I'm going to listen to stuff I like. I hear like 40 bands a day, and I pick maybe one. And I just say, look, this is something I really want to talk, so like you and I connecting is because your music inspired me. So I feel compelled, and I really mean this, Ray, I feel compelled to share it with my audience, as big or as small as it might be on this particular episode, that people deserve to hear your work. They deserve to hear what you're creating, and you deserve to be pushed up that rung because you're living really beautiful things, and you're keeping it pure, and you're keeping it transparent, and that's what matters. It should hit us in the gut and in the soul, and it should resonate with us forever, and that's what your music does to me.
Oh, awesome. Nice. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Is, like we said, it's, we talk about the math and talk about the things, but those are just ways to get to the expression, to get to that new mode of expression that might get you to that other place that you couldn't get to before, So that's really the whole point of it.
That's so cool. Well, I have one more question I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
We could talk all day. I know we can do this. We could do this 4-hour thing, and I'm sure we'll stay connected, which is cool. I've been writing a book on artists and sort of what makes the human tick inside of this cocoon that we're trapped in. You know what I mean? And in the past, I think because I had my own huge struggles, and I felt like the music business kind of, I don't know, I never really achieved what I wanted to achieve, but I always in the past focused on how we fail, which is kind of foolish and sad. And now I'm at a place where I'm saying, okay, how do we fail, but then how do we overcome? Because I think most people, right, they struggle all their lives, and they go through these crises. But I'm curious, what's your most self-destructive habit? That's one. And two, how did you overcome it to be the artist you are today?
All right. This is going to be another long one, but we should go back to the first band I had, Colpitts, which was we put our whole hearts into that thing. And, and we were touring a bit. And things were starting to happen. We were talking to labels, talking to some major labels and things, and it just never happened. And then our friends were getting signed, and then we got really jealous, and then we started infighting, and the classic story. And then the band slowly disintegrated. The singer left, then we changed drummers, and then a bunch of times. And then it's just like, it was left with me and one other guy and a drummer, and we were just like, oh man, that was it. And then so that ended, and man, my whole world shattered, because that was my whole world, right? So like, and I was devastated. And I try to tell my young students this. I teach a lot of guitar lessons, so I keep saying that. But I try to tell them, just keep going, just get into another project, just go do something else right away. Like don't stop, just go. Because I stopped for a bit. I started what would become the Baltic Sea shortly after that Colpitts thing ended, but it was kind of half-hearted. I ended up moving away to England. It's another long story. But like I kind of gave up on music when I moved to England almost completely for a while. And then I eventually got the urge back. I didn't get the urge was always there. It was the belief, the belief that I could do something with it. It was always there, but the kind of the belief that I should get, all right, you need to go back and do music again. So that was something. And then, that led to a period of just not much activity after, I kept going. I always had, ever since I saw a bass, like at first in front of me, I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. I think this can take me somewhere. That sounds really cheesy, but I remember being 12 or 11 and just being like, oh, wow, I think this thing can take me where I want to go, and that seed, that kind of thing was always in my heart and in my, even when I was younger, let's say like 5, 6, 7, I knew that and again, this doesn't mean, this doesn't mean to sound arrogant or anything, but I knew I wasn't going to work in a factory. It was a big factory. I knew I wasn't going to be like have a normal kind of life. And I didn't know what that life was going to be because I wasn't playing music then. I just knew that it wasn't for me, So, anyway, that carried into the music thing, and that inner belief was there the whole time. As much as I tried to crush it, when I failed, it just was like, oh, you're not good enough. That's why. And that you're not good enough thing, like really crushed me until I was probably in my late 30s. I didn't get the success, and I've had only mild success, but sure. I didn't get the success that I started playing 6 Feet Under when I was 40, 41.
Yeah.
Okay,
I know what you're talking about. So I recognize it.
So I didn't have any big, really, my other bands did cool stuff and we played some shows and toured, but that was the first time. At 40 years old, when I was a kid, I thought I was going to be set by 24. I thought I was going to be doing it. And that didn't happen. And so when I got rid of the "you're not good enough" inner voice that we talked about before, you're not special like these other people that are doing this. They're doing it because they're special. When I got rid of that and realized, no, that's not how this works, everything started to happen for me. Yeah. So once I got rid of that, I realized, okay, if I put in the work, things will happen. So I just started working really hard, and then it started to happen through.
Yeah. Man, I am so glad you said that, because I think, every artist I know, and I'm one of them myself, that does oftentimes feel as though I suffer from imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah,
I don't belong here. Yeah. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
There's a reason that band has 10,000 followers and mine has 100 followers, whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so true. We're all equally valuable.
Yeah.
Celebrities are not more valuable than us.
Right.
They're also not necessarily people to look down on that they're celebrities, because they're just people. They just happen to have hit the zeitgeist at the right time. Yeah. We're not friends, and I wouldn't even say we're acquaintances, but Eddie Vedder once said to me, the difference between you and me, Rob, is I do what I do on television. We do the same.
Right.
We do the same thing. Right. I just happen to be in the right spot at the right place. Yeah.
And we didn't talk. Sorry to interrupt. We didn't talk about this factor, but there's always a right time. You're being in the right place at the right time. Listen, I'm from Maine. I'm from the middle of pretty much everything felt so far away growing up.
Right.
Right. All these bands that I loved and admired. Now I live in New Jersey. Now I'm like, oh, these people, everything was close. New York is right there. That was something that was possible. In their minds, maybe their uncle did it, maybe their cousins, but someone they know did things. In Maine, I was like, no one I know did anything, right? In the music industry. So that was so far away. So that led to that feeling of being like, oh man, shit, I'm never going to do this. Eddie Vedder, he met Jack Irons. It was his friend. Jack Irons gave the guys a tape of, and then the rest is history, right? So he luckily right place, right time. But you got to be ready, I tell my students this all the time. It's like, when I started working hard and I finally really started working hard the way I should have always done in my 20s and teens, this was closer to my 30s or so. That's when everything started to happen, really. When I put in the work, there's something else I want to say about this. You put in the work and that lust for kind of like success, you have to shove in the back of your mind. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. You want to be successful. You want to do these things, but it can't be at the forefront of your mind all the time. Mm-hmm. That's not motivating. It's pretty that if you're always thinking about that, you're going to think about not having it, and it's going to stop you from working. But if you put that in the back of your mind and know that that's your ultimate goal, to have success in a certain way, and just keep doing the work and focus on the work only, you'll get, things will happen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and culturally too, I mean, we live in a really messed up society that conflates money, celebrity, influence with success. Yeah. And those aren't even remotely the same things. Right. They just happen to be byproducts of enough faces.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But I mean, what you said a second ago, and I don't remember, I can't even paraphrase it really, but I think about, you were talking about like this idea, of doing something that you're successful at. And I look at you, I mean, us connecting today proves that you're successful. It proves it, because if your music touches one person, I know these are cheesy things, but it touches one person with the legitimacy that it does somebody like myself, who in a sense is a very jaded, old school, high expectation musician.
Yeah.
That really means something, Ray. And nice. People who listen to this show, is because I'm so micro niched, right? They're going to seek you out because you're exactly what people like us want.
Cool.
And it's pure. It's beautiful stuff.
Excellent. No, thank you very much. I appreciate that. To me, this record is already a success because it came out exactly how we wanted to. There's nothing I would change on it. It's, we made it, and I feel really good about it. And I really hope people listen to it, and we're going to try to play as many shows as we can. And we're trying to figure that out now, because again, this is all stuff we recorded pretty much, at home. So we're trying to figure out how to play that live now. So
Yeah.
Should be good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I am so grateful that you spent some time with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah,
dude, I'm going to come out east, and we're going to do a big 2-hour hug, like some of my friends say. Have a couple of beers or a couple of Coca-Colas or whatever you dig, and
sounds good, man.
And discover some new music together, man. I'm really glad you're in my life.
Yeah, excellent, man. Nice to meet you.